Ever imagine that chilling scenario where your son, goes to a friend's for the night, and then the next morning he's just gone?
It sends chills down your spine, doesn't it?
Like vanished without a trace.
Leaving all his belongings behind.
Yeah, and it's not a scene from a movie or anything. This is the reality for Voytech Fidali's family.
Disappeared in December of 2008.
And that's what we're diving deep into today.
Yeah, this perplexing case, all the twists and turns, the events leading up to his disappearance.
The conflicting stories from his friends, and then there's those mysterious notes and phone calls.
Just deepening the mystery.
Really makes you wonder what happened to Voytech.
It starts like any other missing person case,
Right.
almost ordinary. But then as you dig deeper...
It's like peeling back layers of an onion.
Yeah, you uncover these contradictions, unsettling details that you just can't explain.
It's like those seemingly quiet towns, right?
Yeah.
Where everyone thinks they know each other, and then boom, something like this just shakes everything up. So Voytech, recent grad from the University of Rhode Island, he's spending the night at his friend Burton's house.
East Shore Road in Narragansett.
Saturday night, he'd been out with friends, first at a party, then at Charlie O's Tavern.
Then another house party.
Sounds like a pretty typical Saturday night for a young guy, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, pretty normal.
But throughout the evening, there are these, little hints.
Almost like whispers.
Yeah, that something wasn't quite right.
Some friends remember him being quieter than usual.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a bit withdrawn, but nothing too alarming at the time.
So maybe just an off night. Right. We all have those.
Definitely.
But then things get really strange.
In the early hours of the morning, around 5 a.m.,
What?
one of Voytech's friends finds him downstairs.
Downstairs.
Keep in mind, it's December in Rhode Island.
Freezing.
And he's completely naked.
Wow.
Crying, hitting himself with a piece of the bed frame.
That's a huge change from being quiet at a party.
Yeah, it's a drastic shift.
What could have caused that? Any ideas what was going through his mind?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
His friends mentioned he'd been having trouble finding a job.
Oh, after graduating.
Yeah, which was weighing on him.
Understandable.
And then you factor in the loss of his older brother a few years before.
Oh, wow.
And he was also prescribed antidepressants.
It sounds like he was carrying a lot.
Yeah, a lot of weight on his shoulders.
So grief, pressure of starting out in life, maybe even side effects from the meds.
It all could have played a role.
A recipe for a tough time, for sure.
But here's where it gets even more complicated.
Okay.
So some friends say Voytech was acting strange and withdrawn that night.
Mm-hmm.
But others, like his cousin Beata, paint a completely different picture.
Different how?
She'd seen him just a month before and described him as calm, peaceful.
Nothing unusual.
Nothing out of the ordinary.
So it's like we're dealing with two different Voytechs almost.
Right. It's a puzzle.
How do you even begin to reconcile those conflicting accounts?
It's one of the biggest challenges in this case.
Yeah.
We only have the memories and perspectives of the people who were with him that night.
And memory, well, it can be unreliable.
It can be very tricky.
Especially under stress.
Absolutely.
So at some point during that chaotic morning, Voytech disappears from the house.
Vanishes.
What do we know about the initial search? What did the authorities do?
Full-scale search, they used everything.
Like what?
Canine units, divers, helicopters, you name it.
Wow.
Focused on the area around Burton's house, the campground, the old military base, even the marshland.
So they were really covering all their bases, huh?
Absolutely.
Did they find anything that could tell us where Voytech went?
There were a couple of leads, but each one raised more questions than answers.
Like what?
Well, a neighbor reported seeing a man who looked like Voytech sitting on the dock behind Burton's house.
Okay.
But this man was fully clothed.
But we know Voytech left the house naked.
Exactly, so it probably wasn't him.
Okay, so that leads out. Anything else?
Another witness said they saw a naked man jogging through the marsh.
Near the house?
Yeah, around 11 a.m. that same day.
So could that have been Voytech, maybe in some kind of mental break, wandering off?
Possibly, but even this witness, who was driving by at 40 miles per hour, couldn't say for sure it was him. And here's another strange thing. The canine units couldn't pick up Voytech's scent.
Leading away from the house.
Nothing.
So no confirmed sightings, no scent trail.
It's as if he just vanished into thin air.
But the story takes an even stranger turn, right? With those cryptic notes.
Yes, 7 months after Voytech disappeared.
7 months.
2 yellow Post-it notes with strange messages were found on his mother's refrigerator.
His mother.
Yeah.
And the handwriting.
Didn't match Voytech's.
What did they say?
The wording was odd, almost like a coded message. One note read, I, my UMISE love,
Like trying to spell his name.
Voytech, yeah.
So someone broke into his mother's house just to leave these messages. That's creepy.
Very unsettling.
Did they ever find out who did it?
No, they investigated thoroughly, but no signs of forced entry.
Another piece of the puzzle that doesn't fit.
Right.
And then there's that eerie phone call, almost a year after Voytech vanished.
Right.
Tell me about that.
So a year after he disappeared, his mother gets a call,
Okay.
and a child's voice asks for Voytech.
A child?
And he's his brother.
Oh, that's chilling.
Then a woman comes on the line speaking Spanish.
Did they ever trace the call?
It gets even stranger.
Ow.
The call originated in Puerto Rico,
Puerto Rico.
a place Voytech visited on a surfing trip earlier that year.
So someone was definitely trying to connect the dots.
Seems like it.
But why? And why use a child?
So many unanswered questions.
We've got conflicting accounts from friends, strange behavior, cryptic notes, a phone call that seems both random and specific.
Right.
What are we supposed to make of all this?
That's the question that keeps everyone up at night,
It's like someone's playing a game.
leaving breadcrumbs but never the whole story.
It's heartbreaking to think about what Voytech's family has been through, all the uncertainty.
I can't imagine.
Did the police ever consider foul play?
They investigated it, but there's no clear motive.
Voytech wasn't involved in anything illegal, no known enemies, and he was well-liked by all accounts.
That's right.
So if we rule out foul play, at least for now, what are we left with? What are the main theories of what happened to him?
Two main possibilities.
Okay, let's hear them.
Either Voytech disappeared intentionally,
Choosing to live off the grid.
like he'd talked about sometimes,
Right.
or something tragic happened.
An accident, maybe even suicide.
Exactly, but each theory has its problems.
Okay, let's break it down. What evidence supports the off-the-grid theory?
Well, we know Voytech was interested in survivalism.
He liked the outdoors.
Yeah, and he did mention wanting to be one with nature.
Right.
But he left everything behind.
Like what?
His wallet, his phone, any supplies he would need to survive, especially in December.
It's hard to imagine someone just taking off unprepared like that.
Especially someone as smart as Voytech.
That does seem out of character.
It does.
What about the suicide theory? Any evidence there?
No history of serious mental health issues beyond what he'd been dealing with lately.
His friend Adam pointed out that if Voytech did take his own life, it's statistically unlikely for the body to never be found.
That's true.
It's like the ocean, which he seems so drawn to, just swallowed him whole.
It's a haunting thought.
Let's go back to those who were with him that night. Burton, Sean, Caroline.
Okay.
Voytech's family strongly believes his friends know more than they've said.
They've been very vocal about it.
Why do they suspect that? What's the basis for their belief?
Well, there are inconsistencies in their statements to the police, and they've been reluctant to talk to the media about the case.
That definitely raises red flags for the family.
Understandably so.
It makes sense. They'd be suspicious. These were the last people to see Voytech.
Right.
Is there anything specific about their behavior that night that stands out as odd?
There are a few things that raise eyebrows.
Like what?
For example, just hours before Voytech disappeared, there was a wellness check on Burton at his house.
A wellness check.
An ex-girlfriend called the police, worried about him because he had struggled with substance abuse in the past.
So the police were already at the house that night.
For a completely different reason.
Wow, that adds another layer to this.
It does.
The police report says everyone at the house was lucid and sober during the wellness check.
Yeah.
But that was hours before Voytech's strange behavior and disappearance.
A lot could happen in those hours.
It does make you wonder if there's more to the story.
Definitely makes you think.
What about the friend's reluctance to talk publicly? Could that be guilt, or is there a simpler explanation?
It's impossible to know for sure.
Yeah.
Their behavior might seem suspicious, but it's also possible they're just traumatized by what happened.
They might be grieving in their own way.
Exactly.
But for Voytech's family, it feels like they're being stonewalled.
They just want answers.
They deserve to know what happened to their son.
It's heartbreaking. It really is a case with so much ambiguity, and going back to that stonewalling idea, it's worth looking at Burton, the friend Voytech was staying with, more closely.
Oh, okay, why?
Well, the morning of a community search for Voytech, Burton's ex-girlfriend moved all of her stuff out of his house.
That's kind of a strange detail. Why would she do that on that specific day?
Well, she claimed she wanted to avoid contact with Burton, assuming he'd be out looking for Voytech, but the timing is definitely curious.
Yeah, on the very day everyone is coming together, huh?
Yeah.
It really does feel like everyone is holding a piece of the puzzle, but no one wants to share, you know?
Yeah.
We have all these relationships and potential motives and actions that don't quite make sense. Have there been any other theories explored?
Yeah, one line of thinking is that Voytech might have been given drugs without his knowledge that night.
Oh, wow, that's a scary thought.
Yeah, it could explain that sudden change in behavior from being withdrawn to being so agitated.
From quiet to erratic, yeah. Is there any evidence to support that?
Nothing concrete, but it's a possibility we can't just ignore, especially with Burton's history with substance abuse.
Right, and that police report from the wellness check said everyone was lucid and sober, but that was hours before everything happened.
Exactly. So there's a gap in the timeline where something could have happened.
And alcohol can interact with antidepressants in unpredictable ways, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that made things worse.
Exactly. We have to think about all those factors that could have affected Voytech's state of mind that night. The alcohol, the antidepressants, the stress. It could have been like a perfect storm.
Yeah, this case really shows how complicated things can be. What do you think have been some of the biggest challenges for the investigators trying to solve this?
I think the lack of hard evidence has been a major hurdle. No witnesses who could definitely say they saw Voytech after he left the house. No physical evidence and no clear motive.
It's just shrouded in mystery.
Totally.
And all those conflicting accounts from his friends just make things even more confusing. Do you think they're being misleading on purpose, or could they genuinely not remember?
Well, trauma can really mess with your memory. It's very possible they've suppressed certain details, maybe without even realizing it. Their memories could be incomplete or distorted.
So their silence, while it's frustrating for Voytech's family, it could come from a place of fear or guilt, maybe even just wanting to protect themselves.
Exactly. It's a very delicate situation. We have a grieving family desperate for answers, and on the other side, we have a group of friends who might be dealing with their own trauma and guilt, not knowing how to handle this.
It's a tragedy on so many levels. What would you say to anyone who might know something about Voytech's disappearance?
If you were at any of those parties, if you saw Voytech that night, or if you have any information, even if you think it's not important, please come forward. You never know. It could be the missing piece that helps bring some peace to his family.
Even just a small detailed conversation you overheard, it could make a big difference.
Exactly. Sometimes those seemingly insignificant things can really unlock the bigger picture.
The power of collective memory is amazing. Someone might have seen something that they didn't think was important at the time.
Right, it's never too late.
What about those who might be afraid to come forward, maybe worried they'll get in trouble, or that no one will believe them?
It's understandable to feel that way, but honestly, even if you're not sure, it's better to be safe than sorry. Let the investigators figure it out. Your information could be the key to finally solving this mystery.
This case is such a stark reminder that even in seemingly idyllic communities like Narragansett, secrets can linger and mysteries can go unsolved for years and years. But it also shows how important community involvement is and the power of sharing information.
It highlights that enduring hope, that even in the darkest of times, truth can still come to light.
It really makes you think about the family and what they must be going through.
It's unimaginable, the grief and the uncertainty.
Their lives are forever changed.
And the search for answers never really ends.
Voytech's family, though, they're so determined.
After all these years, they haven't given up.
They keep searching, keep his story alive.
They even advocate for other families in similar situations.
That's amazing, the power of love, that family bond. It's inspiring and heartbreaking at the same time.
It really is.
It shows just how deeply we need closure,
We need to understand, to make sense of things that don't make sense.
When someone just vanishes, it leaves such a huge hole.
A void that's almost impossible to fill.
Voytech's case is a powerful reminder that these mysteries aren't just in the movies.
They're real. They happen to real people.
Families and communities are left searching for answers.
And those answers are so hard to come by sometimes.
The not knowing, the questions that linger, it's a heavy burden.
Ambiguous loss. It's one of the hardest things to process.
It's like a puzzle with missing pieces, a story with the ending ripped out.
And it's that lack of resolution that makes these cases so haunting.
We're left with all these possibilities, the what ifs.
The maybe.
And it's only natural to try and fill in those gaps, right?
Right.
To come up with our own explanations.
But we have to be careful not to spread misinformation.
Or add to the family's pain.
Exactly. We need to be responsible with how we talk about these tragedies.
Sensitive to the families involved.
These aren't just abstract mysteries. These are real lives that have been shattered.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Voytech Fidali's disappearance, we're left with more questions than answers.
That's often the case with these mysteries.
But what we can learn from this, what we can take with us,
Is the importance of empathy?
the power of community, and never giving up hope.
Even in the face of such a profound loss, some truth, some understanding can emerge eventually.
Voytech's story reminds us that we're all connected,
It makes us want to listen, to support those who are searching.
to never forget the human cost of these unsolved mysteries.
Exactly.
If you have any information about Voytech's disappearance, please, even if you think it's not important, contact the Narragansett Police Department.
You can find their information on our website.
Even the smallest detail could be the key to bringing closure to this case and to Voytech's family.
And a glimmer of hope to a family who has already endured so much.